The Tiger of Kai, the story of Takeda Shingen. A Chinese proverb once said, "When tiger and dragon meet at river, all time pauses, and all others draw still." The proverb was right. When I came face to face with the Tiger of Kai in 1561, it was as though I momentarily left my body. Everything around me began moving in slow motion, and time itself did stand still. But let me start at the beginning of this story. The story of that man, the Tiger of Kai. Takeda Shingen, the greatest samurai and military strategist to ever set foot on a battlefield. Who was I to him? His sworn enemy, Uesugi Kenshin, the dragon of Echigo. Yet for someone who would become my nemesis, our early years had much in common. Takeda Shingen was born in 1521, myself in 1530. Shingen was born to the province of Kai, a landlocked mountainous region. I was born in an adjacent province, Echigo. Our lands separated, in between, by other regions such as Shinano and Kotsuke. When Takeda Shingen was a young boy, he was educated in Buddhism and other ancient teachings. He took a particular liking to the Chinese text, The Art of War by Sun Tzu. "What does this say?" the young Takeda Shingen would ask his teacher. The teacher translated the text. "As swift as wind, as gentle as forest, as fierce as fire, as unshakable as mountain." Shingen was also taught about the concept of yin and yang. As his teacher explained, yin is like the tiger, representing stillness and introspection, like the moon, night, and water. Yang, like the dragon, representing heat and fire. Both forces balance each other out. As a young boy, I too devoted myself to the study of Buddhism, becoming committed to my Buddhist vows. In later years, I would not marry in adherence to this devout way of life. Takeda Shingen's father was Takeda Nobutora, a gnarly, imposing man who most people were afraid of. There was one person, however, who was not afraid of him: Takeda Shingen. From an early age, Takeda Shingen was sharp and observant. If he had an idea about military strategy, he would share it. Unfortunately, his father, Nobutora, was not receptive. Nobutora was arrogant. As far as Nobutora was concerned, he had already navigated the politics of the region for 30 years successfully, seeing off attempts to overthrow him. He didn't need to listen to the views of his teenage son. Rather than be proud of the man his son was becoming, Nobutora took a displeasing to Shingen. Nobutora even went as far as showing favoritism towards Shingen's younger brother, Takeda Nobushige, instead. In 1536, Nobutora, Shingen's father, was in conflict with a rival warlord. Nobutora orders an attack on the castle of his enemy. He assigns 8,000 men to do the job, to conquer the castle. Despite this, the besieged castle holds out, bearing up against the attacks of the Takeda forces. As time goes on, Nobutora decides to call for a retreat. Observing from his father's side is Takeda Shingen. He has a different view from his father. Shingen does his own calculations. His eyes scan the castle, his brain processing the information, working out where the troops are positioned and where their resources are running low. According to Shingen's analysis, if the inhabitants are tricked into believing the Takeda forces are retreating, a surprise attack targeted on a certain weak spot of the castle will lead to victory. Therefore, after initially retreating, Takeda Shingen orders a unit of men back to the castle to attack. The forces inside the castle are taken by surprise this time. Shingen has his troops enter the castle from different locations, giving the impression his forces are much greater in number than they actually are. The Takeda forces are successful. Victory for the Takeda clan. And the first victory for Takeda Shingen. A victory based on the element of surprise. Dropping the surprise factor, as you will come to see, would be a signature tactic of Takeda Shingen. Just as he had learnt in Sun Tzu's The Art of War, all warfare is based on deception. The victory at this castle should have filled Takeda Nobutora with pride for his son. But for Nobutora, it was as though his son was trying to outshine him. He did not like it. Nobutora starts making plans for Shingen's brother to be named as heir of the clan. Yet in July 1541, Shingen drops his next surprise. When his father Nobutora travels to Sugura province to visit family members, a surprise is sprung. As a result of secret negotiations by Shingen, his father will not be permitted to return to Kai. Instead, he will be forcibly banished to Suruga Castle, an early retirement if you will, albeit a forced one. Nobutora is blindsided, his own son banishing him and taking over control of the clan. But once again, it was Takeda Shingen applying strategy to a situation. Over the years, Nobutora had rubbed people up the wrong way. He was authoritarian, a bully. Many of his own retainers had come to secretly despise him. In his younger and capable son, Takeda Shingen, these retainers saw the future of the clan, and thus were all too happy to throw their support behind Shingen. With the right political maneuvering, of course, which Shingen was beginning to appear quite adept at. With his father now in exile, Shingen wastes no time in asserting his dominance as the leader of the Takeda clan. He sets his sights on something highly desirable, Shinano province. This was the shiny prize that Takeda Shingen needed to expand his territory. It was perfectly situated. Yet unlike in Kai, where one clan, the Takeda clan, had dominance, a patchwork of warlords held pockets of power throughout Shinano province. And when news reaches them that this young upstart is planning an attack, they arrange an emergency meeting. Leaders of the Suwa, Ogasawara, Murakami, and Kiso clan sit around a table and discuss what they can do about this problem. This problem called Takeda Shingen. They settle on a plan. They decide to form a coalition. 12,000 of their soldiers sent to deal with the Takeda forces head on. With only a paltry 3,000 men in comparison, it seems Takeda Shingen has overestimated himself this time. Still, battle lines have been drawn, and in March 1542, at Sezawa, to the west of the Shinano province, it becomes clear that the two sides will meet face to face. It is raining, the air heavy under the weight of impending conflict. As always, Shingen considers how he can deploy the element of surprise. What about a night attack? He asks one of his advisors. Well, a night attack is exactly what he orders. The coalition forces are caught off guard. They cannot organize themselves in time. Like a tiger, the Takeda forces launch on their unsuspecting prey in darkness. And like a tiger, it goes for the throat. Thousands of the coalition forces are taken out. Somehow, the Takeda forces suffer the loss of just 500 men in comparison. In the rain-drenched aftermath, one of the defeated generals, Murakami Yoshikiyo, fights back tears at the crushing loss. This was supposed to be the end of Takeda Shingen's foray into Shinano province. Instead, it is a stunning and decisive victory for the Tiger of Kai, and it marks the beginning of a series of impressive conquests into Shinano province. In quick succession, the siege of Uehara, where Takeda forces work their way even further inward. The siege of Kuwabara, where the Takeda forces conquer the Suwa headquarters and take out the head of the Suwa clan. The siege of Fukuyo, the battle of Ankokuji. The victories continue into the following years. The capture of Nagakubo Castle in 1543, Kojiyama Castle in 1544, Takato and Ryugasaki Castle in 1545, in the Uchiyama Castle in 1546. Victory after victory. Oh, and on his war banner, Takeda Shingen emblazons the following phrase: Furenkazan. Roughly translated, it means, as swift as wind, as gentle as forest, as fierce as fire, as unshakable as mountain. The same phrase plucked from Sun Tzu's The Art of War, which Shingen had loved reading as a boy all those years ago. In 1547, Takeda Shingen and his forces defeat my adoptive father, Uesugi Norimasa, in the Battle of Odaihara. Over the years, I have studied the secret to Takeda Shingen's military success. The secret is, he had multiple secrets. For a start, he valued quality assets in warfare. It was said that his horses were fed a special diet, causing them to be more muscular and sturdy than the average horse. Riding these horses was like riding in luxury. Second of all, Shingen created his very own intelligence service, comprised of ninjas, or shinobi. These ninjas included women and people you would never suspect. But through this secret network of ninjas, Shingen had the ability to both gather and spread information. Another of Shingen's secrets was his ability to recognize the talents of others. For example, one of his generals, Yamamoto Kansuke, was crippled and blind in one eye, but he was a master tactician. Shingen recognized this in Kansuke and made him one of his most trusted advisors. In the end, he would come to have a team known as the 24 Generals, 24 legendary figures, each represented in their own right, who operated immediately under him. Their names would be whispered with feared reverence wherever battles raged. With all these techniques at his disposal, it now felt as if Takeda Shingen, this great tiger of Kai, was truly invincible. Could anyone penetrate the armor of Takeda Shingen? It seemed someone might. Murakami Yoshikiyo. Remember him? He was one of the defeated generals in the 1542 Battle of Sezawa. Well, after that humiliating defeat, Murakami Yoshikiyo set about studying the techniques of Takeda Shingen. Yoshikiyo fancied that he would be the key-o to defeating Shingen. And in 1546, he had almost succeeded. When Shingen and his forces attacked Toishi Castle, Murakami Yoshikiyo was surprisingly able to take out a large portion of the Takeda forward infantry. Fortunately for Shingen, his great one-eyed yet all-seeing advisor, Yamamoto Kansuke, managed to salvage a path back to victory for the Takeda forces. Still, Murakami Yoshikiyo was not finished. In 1548, when Shingen was now 27, Murakami Yoshikiyo launched a direct attack on the Takeda forces. Takeda forces met the attack head-on, charging towards the forces of Murakami Yoshikiyo, with their mentality of crushing anyone that came in their way. But Murakami Yoshikiyo, who all those years ago had been part of the coalition forces defeated through the element of surprise, launches a surprise of his own. Arquebuses, firearms, guns. To his horror, Takeda Shingen sees 2 of his special 24 generals killed in battle, including Itagaki Nobutaka, a man who had once been his teacher. Takeda Shingen is distraught. With Shingen overcome with grief, the Murakami forces capitalize on their opportunity and manage to inflict a spear injury to his arm. Shingen and his remaining forces retreat, Shingen having had his first taste of defeat on the battlefield. Murakami Yoshikiyo now maintained a tenuous grip over parts of Shinano province. Takeda Shingen, on the other hand, nursing both his arm and his wounded pride, plans a comeback. In 1553, the Takeda forces achieved that, successfully taking Katsurao. Murakami Yoshikiyo's wife has to flee in a boat with other refugees. Eventually, Murakami Yoshikiyo himself flees, he flees to neighboring province, Echigo, where a new man has recently become head of the clan. That new man is, well, me, Uesugi Kenshin. Murakami Yoshikyo gets on his hands and knees and tells a terrifying tale of this tiger of Kai. In that moment, I come alive. The idea of going head-to-head with this formidable creature who had defeated every opponent he ever encountered both intimidates and invigorates me. He may be the tiger, but I am the dragon. I realize that to succeed where no one else has before, I will need to match Shingen's skills and tactics. It seemed we already had some qualities in common. We both had been steeped in Chinese teachings. We both had organizational skills. I had been credited with improving the standard of living in Echigo through cultivating trade. In the same way, Shingen had overcome the limitations of Kai being a landlocked province, and thus unable to trade by sea by developing a thriving gold mining industry in the mountains of Kai. Both our deep understanding of Chinese teachings and organizational skills would now need to be applied in the arena of war. June 1553. After conquering Katsurao Castle, Takeda Shingen advances further into Shinano province, into a place called Kawanakajima. This was a plain situated between two rivers, known as the island between two rivers. Fitting that it would become the main battleground for us. Two flowing forces, the yin and the yang, the tiger and the dragon. As some of Shingen's scouts advance, they spot something on the other side of the river. In the shadows of a shrine, built in honor of the war god, Hachiman, they see an amorphous moving entity made up of dark shapes, almost ghostly, until the mist parts and the mystery reveals itself. My army. Shingen is not the only one who can startle his enemy. A battle ensues between our two sides. The Takeda forces are beaten back, and so it is. Takeda Shingen learns he has a new opponent, the Dragon of Echigo, and this opponent has fire and teeth. But then, Takeda Shingen does something strange and unexpected. He retreats. In hindsight, this was a highly intelligent move on Shingen's part. He recognized he was not ready to launch a full-scale attack yet, and so pulled back to regroup. In September, our forces fight some more. Shingen scoring victories, but my forces also able to score a win. Winter kicks in, and the fighting between us grinds to a halt. This first period of fighting between our forces came to be called fuse. Over the course of the next few years, this strange dance of war continued. The Battle of Sagawa in 1555. The Battle of Uenohara in 1557. Attacks, retreats, stalemates. It is said that Shingen was intrigued to know more about me. No doubt he deployed his network of spies. Some even say he tried to orchestrate a local rebellion against me, unsuccessfully. I must confess that I too found myself trying to get into the mind of my opponent, almost to an obsessional level. I wondered what he was like as a person. People said he was calm and intelligent. I knew he was a man of faith like me. I wondered how his faith informed his decisions. In the meanwhile, I was diverted away to deal with internal and external conflicts. But I knew something would have to come to a head. And indeed, it did during our fourth major battle. Something remarkable. In September 1561, I moved 13,000 of my men to a mountain looking down on Kaitsu Castle, a castle occupied by Shingen's forces. Those inside Kaitsu Castle used signal fires to notify Takeda Shingen. And Shingen, along with his trusted advisor, Yamamoto Kansuke, as well as 16,000 men, came to defend Kaitsu Castle. Neither of our sides moved. We were fixed to our positions. Inside Kaizu Castle, Yamamoto Kansuke, the brilliant strategist, devised Operation Woodpecker. Under this plan, a contingent of Takeda forces would move at night to the bottom of the mountain where I was stationed. As part of the plan, a separate contingent of Takeda forces would move to attack me from a separate position at the bottom of the mountain. The plan was intended to force us into a retreat onto the Kawanakajima plain, where yet a third contingent of Takeda forces, including Takeda Shingen himself, would be ready to take us out. That was their plan. Unfortunately for Shingen and his mastermind strategist, I had deployed my own spies and uncovered Shingen's plans ahead of time. And just as Shingen had utilized his horses so well, I instructed my men to wrap cloth around the hooves of our horses so that they would move silently. As we took a secret route down the mountain and drew up right in front of where Takeda Shingen was waiting with a reduced number of soldiers. At dawn, Takeda Shingen looked out onto the plain, expecting to see us fleeing down from the mountain. What he saw was a terrifying sight. Me with over double the number of soldiers ready to charge at him head on. A bloodbath of a battle takes place. My men adopted a special technique. This is a technique we had been practicing in advance of the fight. We use a winding wheel formation where we attack in waves and tired units are quickly replaced by new units. As this technique moves upon the Takeda forces like a swirling wind, I cannot believe my eyes. I see ahead of me the headquarters command tent, where the general, none other than Takeda Shingen himself, must currently be stationed. I ride toward it. A strong emotion overtakes me. With each thundering hoofbeat of my horse, the anticipation builds. When I reach the tent, I use my sword to cut it back. And there he is. The man I have been fighting all these years. The Tiger of Kai. He looks resplendent in his red armor. Our eyes meet. Like the Chinese proverb foretold, time would stand still when tiger and dragon meet by river. A chilling silence falls on the moment. Then, I draw my sword and strike. Shingen has no time to draw his sword. I catch his armor. Suddenly, he pulls his war fan out and uses it to block my next strike. As my sword crashes against his war fan, sparks spray across our faces. We stare intently at one another. Without warning, one of Shingen's bodyguards rushes forward and spears my horse. I'm forced to ride out of the tent. As I ride back toward my forces, I feel all kinds of emotions. I came face to face with my sworn enemy. I wonder what caused me to pause in the tent. In the final analysis, our fourth battle on the Kawanakajima plain would see some of the greatest casualty numbers of nearly all other battles during the Sengoku period of history. On the field, Shingen's cherished strategist Yamamoto Kansuke, the man who had masterminded the movements of the Takeda forces, saw his plan failing before his eyes. Bravely, he rode out onto the plain, fighting mercilessly, enduring multiple wounds, until eventually, at the top of a grassy knoll, he committed ritual suicide. Shingen's youngest brother, Takeda Nobushige, was also killed in the battle. Approximately 2,500 men are estimated to die on the battlefield. Yet despite initially being outnumbered, and despite their battle formation being ill-suited to defending our winding wheel technique, the Takeda forces proved themselves to be skilled and highly adaptive. The Takeda contingent, which had been positioned to attack us on the mountain, sliced their way through the small delegation of forces left behind to guard the ford, and charge onto the plain to provide backup for Shingen. Ironically, carrying out, at least in part, Yamamoto Kansuke's planned pincer strategy. In the end, we both lose over 60% of our forces. As the Takeda forces start to mount an impressive comeback, I draw some of our forces back. I think I see Shingen on the battlefield. I expect him to order his forces to stop us retreating, but something seems to give him pause. It becomes impossible to declare victor. The tiger and the dragon had fought, and left much devastation in their wake. And so, it was the fourth Battle of Kawanakajima. In the years that followed, Shingen would be involved in ever-changing alliances with other clans. Our own interactions, though never on the scale of Kawanakajima again, continued to retain a mysterious quality. When Shingen's relationship with the neighboring Hoju and Imagawa clan broke down, they responded by blocking all shipments of salt to the region of Kai. He was in a difficult situation. I arranged for consignments of salt to be sent to Shingen with the message saying, "I fight with the sword, not salt." Shingen was apparently deeply moved by this gesture. He had a treasured family sword sent to me as a gift. In 1573, the then shogun of Japan, Ashikaga Yoshiaki, encouraged Shingen to move against the Oda clan, which was expanding in power. In January 1573, Takeda Shingen and his forces would fight Tokugawa Ieyasu, who was allied with the Oda clan. Tokugawa Ieyasu would later go on to become one of the most important people in Japanese history. However, when he met Takeda Shingen on the battlefield on 25th of January 1573, in what became known as the Battle of Migatargahara, Takeda Shingen delivered one of the most spectacular military performances on a battlefield in the history of Japanese warfare. Tokugawa Ieyasu had been warned by his own generals not to attack Takeda forces. He didn't listen. As Takeda troops advanced in the direction of Kyoto, Tokugawa Ieyasu positioned his men on the high plains of Mikatagahara. As snow fell, Tokugawa Ieyasu gave the order to open fire. It was thought the use of firearms would give Ieyasu's forces the advantage. It didn't. Shingen's forces pounced on their adversaries, their swords like the claws of a tiger, cutting them down. Tokugawa Ieyasu barely escaped alive, his remaining generals having to plead with him to flee. As he is ridden back to Hamamatsu Castle with only 5 men by his side, Tokugawa Ieyasu struggles to process the stinging defeat. The Tiger of Kai emerges victorious. Takeda Shingen plows further ahead to Mikawa province, gaining further territory, and lays siege to Noda Castle, which houses approximately 500 Tokugawa soldiers. During the siege, Takeda Shingen again shows his ability to think outside the box, making use of his gold miners to tunnel under the castle and obstruct the water supply. From inside the castle, a flute is played each evening to keep up the morale of the Tokugawa forces. Takeda Shingen instructs his troops to listen to the quality of the flute playing, suggesting this would provide valuable insight into how the men were faring inside. At this point, it seems Takeda Shingen truly is unstoppable. With his advances toward the capital, he is poised for total domination of the entire country. Until he isn't. One morning on a mountain with snow falling around me, an emissary places their hand on my shoulder and delivers news which hits me like a blow to the head. Takeda Shingen, the Tiger of Kai, has died. I didn't learn the news immediately. Shingen had instructed that news of his death be kept a secret initially to prevent enemies attacking the Takeda clan. Conflicting stories are given about the cause of Shingen's death. Some say it was an arrow wound. Others say it was illness. I am moved to learn that on his deathbed, Takeda Shingen counseled his son, Takeda Katsuyori, to make peace with me, as he said I was an honorable man. To my surprise, I find myself deeply affected by the news. As cherry blossoms fall around me, atop the mountain, my eyes fill with tears. With the death of this tiger, This dragon has lost his once great rival. Rest now. You were one of the greats.
I am learning only now of the news. The winds carry whispers of the truth. It was strategically hidden from view that you, the legend, have said goodbye. There's a void that comes when great men fall, leaving us searching, lost in it all. In your shadow we find our call, as snow falls on those mountains tall. I remember who you were, the tiger of Kai, a guiding star in the legend of a man who once was. We find strength in the shadows we cast. Through the whispering wind, I sense your grace. In our clashes we shared a sacred space. Now I find myself in this empty place, wondering where you've gone without a trace. I remember who you were, the tiger of Kai, a guiding star in the legend of a man who once was. We find strength in the shadows we cast. Though the battle cease, the memories persist. In your honor, we continue to resist. For the legends live on in the tales we tell, in the hearts of those who knew you well. I remember who you were, the tiger of Kai, a guiding star in the legend of a man who once was. We find strength in the shadows we cast.
Takeda Shingen died on 13th of May, 1573. He was 51. The greatness of Takeda Shingen extended far beyond his death. Ironically, the man who Shingen had been in conflict with prior to his death, Tokugawa Ieyasu, would go on to rule all of Japan, implementing many of the battle techniques and strategy that Shingen had once deployed against him, and which had nearly seen Ieyasu defeated in the Battle of Mika Takahara. Ieyasu also continued to cultivate the gold mines in the Kai region, which provided a source of wealth for the shogunate in the years that followed. Takeda Shingen was more than a great mind on the battlefield. His ideas on governing the region of Kai produced innovations in everything from laws to flood control to the design of the modern flushing toilet. Still, it was his unparalleled skill as a warrior, bold and majestic as a tiger, which is emblazoned in history. And in the mountains of Kai, in the whispering winds and flowing streams, the spirit of that great tiger guards over the land with a silent resilience. That would be where I end the story, and it's wrong to speculate, especially when the widespread consensus is that Takeda Shingen died of illness. But I always found it suspicious that at the point when Shingen was poised to take over control of Japan and was the only warlord able to stop the then rising power, Oda Nobunaga, he dropped down dead. In the years after he died, I tried to find out more information. I learned that Shingen's lips had turned black before he died, the way they might if, for example, he'd been, say, poisoned. I thought too of how, like Shingen, Oda Nobunaga had come to rely on ninjas, shinobi, operatives who snuck around like shadows under the cover of night. As the years pass, I find myself ever more uneasy, always looking over my shoulder. When walking in the forest, I question, was that a shadow in the tree behind me? What is this dark shadow that always seems to follow me around? Is it a premonition of my own death, or something else? It weighs on me so much that I write a death poem. Even a lifelong prosperity is but one cup of sake. A life of 49 years is passed in a dream. In 1578, almost 5 years after Shingen died, I formed an alliance with Takeda Shingen's son, Takeda Katsuyori, and agreed to support him in his fight with Oda Nobunaga. Yet on 19th of April 1578, I dropped down dead, clutching my stomach. Another warlord at the point of being poised to take on Oda Nobunaga, dying suddenly. It is said that upon learning of my death, Oda Nobunaga declared, "Now the empire is mine." Over time, historians would point to my death poem as evidence that I knew of my impending death, and thus conclude I had an illness which I was aware of. But right before I died, I will tell you, I saw that shadow behind me.